Everybody. Today we're going to be looking at Unit 1.6 and 7. I'm going to try to go quick. I know I say that all the time, but I am. I'm going to try. So the topic 1.6 is about scales of analysis. And so we've talked about scale a little bit already, and we're going to distinguish between a map scale and scales of analysis. Those are two very different things, and it's going to be critical for you to be able to understand the difference. All right. And so the scales of analysis down here, we're going to have four different types: global, regional, national, and local. And we're going to look at how the scale that we look at determines the information that we see and how it can actually cause the picture that we're looking at to change, our understanding of it to change. So the first I want to look at these two comparisons. So again, a map scale refers to how close the picture is. Remember, this is the one we've been talking about. If we zoom in on a city and look at a map of a city itself, that would be a very large scale. And as we zoom out, that's a very small scale. And again, scales of analysis refers to what level of analysis we're looking at in the map. And hopefully within about 7 or 8 minutes, that's going to make a lot more sense. So first, let's look at map scale itself. And so scale is just, here's a definition up here. It's just the relationship between the proportion of the Earth being studied and the Earth as a whole. All right, and so you can see over here, this says, so I can move my picture here, get my big head out of the way. All right, so you can see this is large scale down here, and large scale is when you have a lot of detail. All right, and then small scale up here, very little detail. Okay, and so you might see a couple of different things on a map. You might see something called a verbal scale, where it just says like 1 inch equals 1,485 miles. And so they give you some measurements down here. You might see something called a representative fraction. And notice that there aren't any units that go along with this. It's not miles or centimeters or anything like that. This is just saying that one of whatever unit you put on the map is 94 million of that unit. And so if we said, look, if we take an inch of the map like that, however big that is, that would equal in real life 94 million inches. All right, and so you can see how the representative fraction, if we're going from the very small scale, big picture kind of stuff, down to something like this. So now down here, this would say like 1 inch equals 130,000 inches. All right, and so as the scale gets larger, so as we zoom in, then this representative fraction, the denominator, is going to be getting smaller. All right. And so again, over here on the far right, these are just we go from very small scale. If we had a picture of the Earth, that would be about the smallest scale out there we could find of a map of Earth. And then large scale up here would be very close. All right. And so you might see these terms also. Let me point these out. You might see this term cartographic scale or relative scale, and that's what this stuff is. All righty. So real quick, so a large scale map would be where you can zoom in. And so this is Pacific City. So we can see a lot of detail there. A small scale map, so again, that's zooming in. A small scale map is when we zoom out. And so this would be an entire map of California. That would be a small scale. If we zoomed further out and just looked at the US, that would be an even smaller scale. If we looked at the Western Hemisphere, even smaller, you get the idea. All righty. Now, well, they're all important, but this one is definitely going to be an important one for you. So the next little bit is about scales of analysis. All right. And so I'm just going to run through the definition. We'll look at the four, and then instead of trying to sit here and explain it all, we'll look at some examples, because I think that will resolve everything for us. So we'll talk about scale of analysis. It is the level at which the data is being presented. All right. And so we can have four different types. We can have a global scale of analysis. This is going to be more rare. A regional, a national, or a local. All right. And so again, the way to figure out what scale of analysis it is based on the information that's being displayed. All right. So let's look at a global scale of analysis first. So this would be obviously a map of the world. There are no boundary lines depicted anywhere. That's how, we know this is a global scale. They're not breaking it up into smaller units. All right. This is about the smallest scale we can get of Earth. All right. So a global scale of analysis shows the world at one level of data. All right, and the only thing really that would this would be a good example of is climate data. You know, if you can look at the world as a whole and say, okay, what is happening globally to the climate? All right, that would be about it when we talk about a global scale of analysis. So really, you probably won't see the global scale as a question anywhere. Oops, not sure what's going on there. But that is the biggest. All right, so now let's look at this. This is what we call regional scale of analysis. And take note here, you know, we've got different areas of the Earth. All right, it's not breaking it into countries or anything. It is breaking it into regions. I guess it's part of that. And so you get the idea. So this sub-Saharan Africa, Northern Africa. And so regional analysis shows data by continents. All right, so we could just have 7 sets of data or some other type of world region. And so we're going to look at regions in 1.7, but so the scale of analysis would be comparing those really big groups of things. And so again, continents or other types of regions. All right, and so the example of the map to the right depicts data that's grouped by regions or continents. Actually, this one doesn't, but you get the idea. So some of the world's major regions, so Southeast Asia. So we might look, Southeast Asia would be over here. And so is there some data being represented here that might be different from Southern Asia, which is here, which might be different from Southern Africa, which is here, you know, and so we're comparing regions and not individual countries. All right. Now we have what they call a national scale of analysis. And so this is where it can get a little bit tricky. I want to make sure that you are clear on this. So obviously this is a map of the world, right? Now, the trick to figuring out which scale of analysis we're talking about is how is the data being presented? And so if you take a look at this map, you know, we've got, so we've got the US and Canada and Mexico here. And so individual countries, Russia, Mongolia, China. And so the information that they're trying to impart to us, so this is GDP per capita, the information they're trying to give to us, they're breaking it down on an individual national level. So each individual country is being represented. So when we talk about a scale of analysis, it is when information is being displayed on a national level. All right, so how does one country compare with another? So again, even though it's a global map, it's a world map, the data is being displayed on a national level. All right. Now, a local scale of analysis is looking at anything smaller than a country. All right, that's the easiest way to do it. And so a local scale of analysis, it could be, so if we look at the US, so this is a national map, but the scale of analysis is comparing individual states. So we've got Illinois and Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. And so they're saying, look, here's some information about each individual state and how each individual state may differ from the others. All right, and so we would call that a local scale. And again, this could be states, this could be counties, it could be zip codes. However smaller you wanted to break that information down, besides just looking at the country as a whole, that would be local, okay? So again, we could compare, you know, Arizona and New Mexico here. And so that would be an example of a local scale. All right, and again, we could break this down into counties. All right, and so take a look at this. This would be, well, let me ask you this. Is this a global, a regional, a national, or a local scale of analysis? So think about it for just a second. So it's got to be one of those 4, global, regional, national, or local. And so again, this is a world map, but it's not a global scale because think about how they're presenting the information. Are they presenting the information based on regions, or are they presenting it based on individual countries, or are they presenting it based on individual parts within individual countries? And so this is obviously broken down into regions. And so this would be, the scale of analysis for this would be a regional analysis. All right, so and the point I want to get across here is that as we start to, so this is a big picture of wealth across the world. And so as we start to change the scale of analysis, I want you to see that the picture of what we have in our head might start to change a little bit. All right, and so we can look here. North America, we've got, $101 trillion worth of wealth, 80 trillion in Europe, 76 trillion in Asia, 9 there, 3 trillion in Africa, and 8 trillion in South America. And so that's just a regional look. All right, so now when we start to break it down, we can get a little more detail. All right, so the US is still obviously very high. Australia is very high. But notice we can start to see some differences. And so there's some differences there. And so, the idea of getting closer into the data, it starts to reveal a much bigger picture, because we have, 2 countries here in Africa that are extraordinarily different. All right, but if we go back to this map, it just says Africa as a whole. And so this starts to help us better understand within each region, how are things distributed. All right. And so now take a look at this scale of analysis. What type of scale is this? Is this local or national or regional? And so again, the information is being displayed on a state comparison level. All right, and so this would be a local scale of analysis. And so this is talking about the richest states in America. And again, if we go back to this map, this is saying, hey, look, North America's got $101 trillion. That's awesome. But if we zoom into the scale a little bit and say, now look, does that mean that everybody in the US is wealthy? And clearly not. We don't have numbers of the wealth here in this map. We could get those, but so you can see there are parts of the US that are, ranked very low, and there's parts that rank very high. All right, and so we can even zoom in closer. And so this is average income in dollars per county. Again, this is a local thing. And so you can see if we let's zoom in on Arizona here real quick. We have, this is a little bit wealthier. This is a little bit wealthier. And so these are our 2 wealthiest counties on a per capita basis, income per capita. And so, yeah. And so we can see the differences in counties. And so just looking at Arizona, we'd say, go back to this one, Arizona, say, hey, we rank 40th. Let's look at Arizona a little more closely. There are some wealthier areas and there are some not as wealthy areas. You can look at California. California is extremely wealthy there, maybe not so much up here. All right. And so again, the closer we get, the more detail we get. And so this is, extremely close. This is income inequality. So basically measuring the same thing. And this is getting into the city of Miami. And so these are just neighborhoods. All right. And so you can see the scale down here. Dark red equals less equal. Lighter red equals more equal. And so we can have, this area right by that area, right by that area. And so within each, if we did this for Tucson, we would see which areas of Tucson had more wealth and which areas had less wealth. And so again, the closer the scale, the better the picture we get. All right. And so I am going to show you this video, and I want you to think of, and I'll stop this video after this. And I want you to think, you know what? Hang on. Let me think about this for a second. I'm going to pause it. Sorry about that. So I fast forwarded the video a little bit because it's a 20-minute video and we don't need to watch all of that. But I want you to pay attention to how the different scales of analysis here. All right. And so let me continue with this, and I'll stop it when I think we've got enough of what he's talking about. So he's talking about wealth of regions right now.
I can show you Africa. This is Africa. 10% of...
This is showing amount earned. This is income per day, so dollars per day. All right, so this is the country of Africa, and he's going to layer in the different regions.
World population most in poverty. This is OECD, the rich country, the country club of the UN. And they are over here on this side, and quite an overlap.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt one more time. So OECD that he's talking about stands for Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development. I got to double check that. It's been a while. These are like the 20 wealthiest countries in the world. All right, that's all that is.
Between Africa and OECD, and this is Latin America. It has everything on this earth, from the poorest to the richest in Latin America. And on top of that, we can put East Europe, we can put East Asia, and we put South Asia. And how did it look like if we go back in time to about 1970? Then there was more of a hump. And we have most who lived in absolute poverty were Asians. The problem in the world was the poverty in Asia. And if I now let the world move forward, you will see that while population increase, there are hundreds of millions in Asia getting out of poverty and some others get into poverty. And this is the pattern we have today. And the best projection from the World Bank is that this will happen. And we will not have a divided world. We will have most people in the middle. Of course, it's a logarithmic scale here. But our concept of economy is growth with percent. We look upon it as a possibility of percentage increase. If I change these and I take GDP per capita instead of family income, and I turn these individual data into regional data of gross domestic product, and I take the regions down here, the size of the bubble is still the population, and you have the OECD there, and you have sub-Saharan Africa there, and we take off the Arab states there, coming both from Africa and from Asia, and we put them separately, and we can expand this axis, and I can give it a new dimension here by adding the social values there, child survival. Now I have money on that axis, and I have the possibility of children to survive there. In some countries, 99.7% of children survive to 5 years of age, others only 70. And here it seems that there is a gap between OECD, Latin America, East Europe, East Asia, Arab states, South Asia, and sub-Saharan Africa. The linearity is very strong between child survival and money. But let me split sub-Saharan Africa. Health is there, and better health is up there. I can go here, and I can split sub-Saharan Africa into its countries. And when it bursts, the size of each country bubble is the size of the population. Sierra Leone down there, Mauritius up there. Mauritius was the first country to get away with trade barriers, and they could sell their sugar, they could sell their textiles on equal terms as the people in Europe and North America.
So again, this is what I want you to see, is changing the scale of analysis, which is going to change the picture of the data and how we might understand the data from different regions.
There's a huge difference between Africa, and Ghana is here in the middle. In Sierra Leone, humanitarian aid. Here in Uganda, development aid. Here, time to invest. There you can go for holiday. It's a tremendous variation within Africa, which we very often make that it's equal everything. I can split South Asia here. India is the big bubble in the middle, but huge difference between Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. And I can split Arab states. How are they? Same climate, same culture, same religion, huge difference. Even between neighbors. Yemen, civil war, United Arab Emirates money, which was quite equally and well used. Not as the myth is. And that includes all the children of the foreign workers who are in the country. Data is often better than you think. Many people say that data is bad. There is an uncertainty margin. But we can see the difference here, Cambodia, Singapore. The differences are much bigger than the weakness of the data. East Europe, Soviet economy for a long time, but they come out after 10 years very, very differently. And there is Latin America. Today we don't have to go to Cuba to find a healthy country in Latin America. Chile will have a lower child mortality than Cuba within some few years from now. And here we have high-income countries in OECD, and we get the whole pattern here of the world, which is more or less like this. And if we look at it, how it looks the world, in 1960, it starts to move, 1960. This is Mao Zedong. He brought health to China. And then he died, and then Deng Xiaoping came and brought money to China and brought them into the mainstream again. And we have seen how countries move in different directions like this. So it's sort of difficult to get an example country which shows the pattern of the world. But I would like to bring you back to about here at 1960. And I would like to compare South Korea, which is this one, with Brazil, which is this one. The label went away for me here. And I would like to compare Uganda, which is there. And I can run it forward like this. And you can see how South Korea is making a very, very fast advancement, whereas Brazil is much slower. And if we move back again here, and we put on trails on them like this, you can see again.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here for just a second. I think there was one more thing in here that I wanted to show you. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. It's a really cool video, but it's 20 minutes long, and we'll look at other parts later. So that's it. I'm going to stop the video here and just split it into two. So this is 1.6. Again, scales of analysis, and we will leave it at that. So we'll do 1.7 in the next video.